from funnel to rupture, black holes as dimensional apertures. This paper introduces rupture with deliberate restraint. It does not claim proof, propose full cosmological models, or assert parent-child universe dynamics. Its role is narrower and structural. It asks what happens when space-time curvature exceeds the capacity of a geometric sheet to remain smoothly embedded. The core claim is that collapse does not necessarily terminate space-time. Instead, beyond a critical threshold, geometry inverts. What appears externally as a terminal funnel may internally correspond to a transition into a new space-time region. The language of rupture is used carefully here, not as an explosion or tearing, but as a phased transition in geometry itself. In the terrain framework, space-time behaves like a continuous geometric sheet with finite capacity for curvature. That capacity is not a material strength or elasticity. It is a limit imposed by geometry and causal consistency. As curvature steepens, paths narrow, stabilization options vanish, and the geometry approaches a configuration where continuation within the same embedding becomes untenable. Up to this point, black holes are treated as cones, terminal funnels where all future directed paths converge inward relative to the external geometry. The question this paper addresses is what happens when even that description becomes insufficient. The proposal is that beyond a certain curvature threshold, space-time does not simply end. Instead, the sheet undergoes a topological inversion. This inversion is not a shattering or violent rupture in the everyday sense. It is a reconfiguration of orientation. The geometry folds through itself in a way that preserves continuity while changing relational structure. What was an inward direction relative to the external space-time ceases to be meaningfully inward or outward at all. The concepts of inside and outside lose their conventional meaning because they depend on a shared embedding that no longer applies. Rupture, in this context, is best understood as a phase transition. Before the transition, space-time supports a particular arrangement of causal paths. After it, a different arrangement becomes dominant. The transition does not require explosive energy release or matter-driven violence. It is geometric. Just as water can change phase without vanishing, space-time can change configuration without terminating existence. The continuity lies in geometry itself, not in coordinates or observers. This framing helps resolve a long-standing tension without resolving everything. Classical descriptions of black holes push geometry toward extremes while deliberately refusing to describe what lies beyond certain limits. That refusal is methodologically sound, but it leaves an interpretive gap. The rupture concept fills that gap cautiously. It suggests that when curvature saturates the allowable structure of a space-time sheet, continuation requires a new region of geometry rather than further compression within the old one. The funnel does not close into nothing. It opens into something else. Importantly, this is not a claim about observable interiors. It does not assert that signals emerge, that information is recoverable, or that any causal bridge exists back to the original region. An aperture is not a window. It is a geometric continuation whose accessibility is orientation dependent. From the outside, the black hole remains terminal. From the inside, the notion of outside may not exist at all. The transition severs shared reference frames, not existence. By framing rupture as a geometric phase change, the paper avoids speculative inflationary narratives or parent universe mechanics. No assumptions are made about what the new region contains, how it evolves, or whether it resembles our own space-time in any familiar way. The only claim is structural. Geometry under extreme curvature may prefer inversion over termination. That preference is not asserted as fact, but as a plausible continuation consistent with treating space-time as a continuous capacity-limited structure. This paper exists because later reinterpretations require a hinge, an intermediate concept that allows continuity without hand-waving. Without rupture, black holes remain dead ends. With rupture framed carefully, they become transitions without being explained away. The funnel reaches a limit. Geometry responds not by breaking, but by changing how it connects. What follows is not described yet. What matters here is that collapse need not mean annihilation. It may mean passage through a fold where old directions cease to apply and a new space-time region begins. While the idea of rupture must remain cautious, its underlying logic is already supported by how established physics treats extreme curvature and the limits of classical description. General relativity does not describe space-time as something that can simply stop. It describes a geometric manifold whose equations lose predictive power under certain conditions. Importantly, loss of predictability is not the same as physical termination. It signals that the model has reached a boundary of applicability, not that space-time itself has ended. This distinction is foundational to how modern physics interprets singular behavior and was already implicit in the geometric formulation developed by Albert Einstein. One key support comes from how singularities are treated in classical relativity. Singularity theorems demonstrate that under certain conditions, geodesics become incomplete. They do not state that space-time vanishes, explodes, or is destroyed. They state that classical space-time description cannot be smoothly extended within the same geometric framework. This is a critical nuance. Geodesic incompleteness marks a breakdown of description, not necessarily a breakdown of existence. The equations flag a capacity limit of the geometric sheet as currently defined. This distinction has been emphasized historically by relativists such as Roger Penrose, who carefully separated singularity formation from claims about physical endpoints. The mathematics proves that certain trajectories cannot be extended within the same manifold structure, but it does not prescribe what replaces that structure. This leaves open the possibility that continuation requires a different geometric configuration rather than further compression within the old one. The rupture concept fits precisely into that gap, a transition when continuation within the same embedding becomes impossible. Further support comes from the behavior of horizons and causal structure near extreme curvature. As discussed earlier, event horizons already represent orientation changes rather than material boundaries. Light cones tilt, allowable paths reconfigure, and causal relationships invert. This shows that space-time geometry is capable of undergoing qualitative changes in orientation without violating continuity. Rupture extends this same logic to its extreme limit. If orientation can flip locally at a horizon, it is not unreasonable to consider that beyond saturation, orientation may reconfigure globally into a new region. The idea of capacity limits is also consistent with how physicists interpret phase transitions more generally. In many systems, gradual parameter changes lead to abrupt reconfiguration when thresholds are crossed. The system does not explode, it reorganizes. While spacetime is not a material medium, the mathematics governing its structure still admits threshold behavior. When curvature gradients become arbitrarily steep, the assumption of smooth continuation within the same manifold becomes unstable. A phase change in geometry is a conservative way to interpret that instability without introducing exotic forces or external agents. Crucially, nothing here relies on inflationary mechanisms, parent universe dynamics, or proof claims. The support lies entirely in what classical theory already allows and, equally importantly, what it refuses to assert. General relativity openly acknowledges its own limits at extreme curvature. It does not insist that collapse must end in annihilation. It simply stops speaking. Interpreting that silence as geometric termination is an extra assumption, not a requirement. Finally, modern approaches to quantum gravity, while not invoked directly here, are motivated by the same recognition that space-time as classically described may reorganize rather than disappear under extreme conditions. Even without adopting any specific framework, the motivation itself supports the plausibility of rupture as a phase transition. Physics expects continuity of existence even when classical geometry fails. Taken together, singularity theorems, horizon behavior, causal reorientation, and the acknowledged limits of classical space-time description all support a restrained conclusion. When curvature exceeds the capacity of a space-time sheet, Continuation within the same geometric embedding may fail. That failure does not logically entail termination. A geometric reconfiguration, inversion, fold, or rupture is a structurally consistent way to allow continuity without violating known external physics. This does not prove that rupture occurs. It establishes that treating collapse as absolute termination is not demanded by the science we already have.